Welcome everybody to the Fantasy Golf Insider Webcast and Podcast. I'm Jeff Bergerson. Back from his little vacay is my partner, Zachary Turcotte. We're with FantasyGolfInsider.com, where if you are not a premium member of the site, be sure to go on, become one, take advantage of our tools, read our articles, because last week, Zachary, was a huge week.
Huge week. We wait for those all year. We get a handful of those that go perfectly to plan, and if you were in on it, you hit it big. We had a lot of people who hit it really big with us.
Thus, we'll be doing shout-outs for about 45 minutes of this episode. So I should say we are available as a podcast on iTunes and Stitcher. Be sure to check us out there as well. Give us a nice review. That would be cool. Should we get into the shout-out, Zachary?
Yeah, hit it.
All right. Modified DFS. He's a longtime FGI member. Austin Greenway, who I seem to be reading his name quite often lately. Satchel. Brandon Greenspan. Ron Van Elsis, who moved on to the next part of the Fantasy Golf World Championship.
Sweet.
Let us know he had a good week. Mark Mercado. Primal, who's at Hosier2. Josh, who's at Ace of Blades Josh. Adam Goudreau. Scott A. Mills, who's at Full Body Fix. Scott Toole, who won a $1,500 ticket to this week's main event. Brian Zell, Richard Cornell. And a particularly huge week from Richard King, who did something nice for us. You want to talk about that? Well, he won like a shitload of money. So.
I mean, he'd been talking earlier in the week, asking some strategy questions, and getting ready to go, trying to win a ticket or two into the main event here this week. And he made an $1,800 investment and turned it into $26,000.
That's not a bad weekend.
And sent us a very nice gift certificate afterwards. I'm not even going to say how nice it was. It was such a generous gift.
That's awesome.
I actually opened that email first before I saw his email telling about what he had done. And I thought the email was a scam. I thought, where does it want me to put my credit card information in, birth date, address? And sure enough, then the next one was from him, and I was it made my day. It was cool. Amazing. I love hearing stories like that. So it's great because we work so hard, and some weeks it's just a grind. You're just trying to stay even and avoid a lot of the carnage out there. You win a little bit in cash, and you're just kind of hanging in there. And then this last week, boom, you hit everything right on the screws. You know, I didn't have the top prizes for GPPs, but I was triple and quadruple my money in both of the ones that I entered for the week. So it was a great week for me, great week for you, huge week for FGI. So if you haven't checked us out yet, it's a good time to start because we're just starting to get a little bit of momentum.
Yeah, we got 3 events left in the FedEx Cup playoffs. The Barclays overall was good. I mean, Patrick Reed, good to see him finally break through with a win. He really
wanted to give it away at the end.
He kind of did.
Badly. It's like if I could just miss the fairway by another 20 yards or so and find some more thick scrub to try to hit out of. But you know what? Ricky Fowler played right along with that in terms of absolutely just crumbling down the stretch. So it was an interesting way to watch the tournament end after both of those guys had played so well throughout the rest of the event.
Well, I'm a Reed guy, so I was happy to see him win. He's just an intense cat.
And I was going to be angry. I was going to be angry as all hell if this was the week when Ricky finally came through and we didn't own any shares, because the whole weekend I just thought, if I just flip him for Bubba here, I win all the money.
Right. And it turns out it wasn't that big.
No, because Bubba did have his one Sunday big round. We just waited till, and Bubba does that every event. He can be down near the bottom and then have one great round, and he's right back in it making value for you. So it worked out reasonably well. So really happy with the results last week, and hopefully we can keep that going.
Cool. So on to shots of the week. And I know about 20% of the field would like to have taken a shot on Friday when Mr. Stenson ruined their rosters. But there's someone better for us.
Yes.
Actually hurt us worse.
Are you going to go over to the European tour?
I'm going to jump overseas to a guy named Nino Bertazio.
A guy who's been good to us.
Yeah, he's been very good. He's been in my core most every week. But so he heads into the 36th hole.
Yep.
Clear of the cut line by 2 strokes, and you can only imagine
needing
what happened.
Only a double bogey to move on.
That's right. And he could not manage the double bogey. I couldn't believe what I was watching on my phone. I'm like, oh my God, are you serious?
Did you actually watch this happen as you were?
I didn't watch it. I was watching on my phone, just kept updating on the European Tour app. Oh, and I couldn't believe, because there's certain guys who are like right on the line and you're watching them, sweating them, but those guys who are a couple clear, you're not watching like every shot because you're feeling pretty good that they're not going to triple the last hole.
Yeah, exactly.
Sure enough, he does, and luckily my Euro cash team still won for the most part.
Amazingly so. Like, I actually had 3 of 6 teams in
Three
Euro.
of 6 players.
Yeah, 3 of 6 players making the cut,
right,
and still was able to cash in a number of entries. I was actually still profitable for the week in cash games with 3 out of 6, which just goes to show you how volatile the Euro Tour is in terms of getting guys through. But it's just a little bit, the interesting point to talk about there, though, is it's just a little bit different in terms of a strategy. That's kind of one of the things that I mentioned in my column a few weeks back, is that with Euro, one of the things that I really try to do is just to lock down 2 studs at the top of my lineup. And then the next 4, if I can just find 4 guys in that low value range, I'm really just hoping...
Of which one can make the cut?
I'm really just hoping that 2 guys out of the 4 can somehow battle their way through. I want to lock down the 2 at the top. I mean, my aim in cash in Euro is to get 4 of 6.
Right.
Whereas on PGA last week, I figured you either have to have a very good 5 of 6 or 6 of 6 in order to get paid. Fortunately, we did. But Euro, really the aim is 4. If you get 4 through the cut in cash games, as long as one of them is anywhere near decent, you're probably going to get paid.
Right.
So just a little difference, a little nuance in terms of the strategy there.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I won most of my cash games, won in GPP, but Nino did cost me some cash on the GPP because I fell.
You were up in first place there for a while.
Yes. All right, get some alcohol back in my system after we had a rough Saturday night. It was a good time.
You had a rough Saturday
All
night.
right. I had a rough Sunday morning.
I mean, you needed a lot of alcohol to get past the fact that some of the ladies at our 20-year reunion...
Well, you should tell them it was our 20-year reunion, so yeah.
I know.
What do you have to say?
No, it was fun. It was a good time. I love.
What were you saying about the ladies?
I love going because I feel like I've aged well over the last 20 years. I feel like you've aged well. I feel like other people haven't aged as well. And so it brings me just a little bit of joy to see some of those girls from back in the early days who absolutely could not possibly even remember your name walking through the hallways. Walk by now and they look like life has just beat them to shit. You saw one girl there.
Oh, jeez.
I won't say any names.
Well, that's big of you.
Yeah, I know. There's only like 450 girls in our class. But one girl there I didn't actually recognize. I thought she must be like this person's older friend that she was with, because she looked like she was about 50. I mean, life had taken its toll. So, it kind of makes me smile on the inside a little bit. I'm a negative person, so it's the kind of thing that brings me joy. That and watching you actually get to the point of drunkenness.
Yeah, it is tough for me to do.
Which is work.
Which is work. It was a lot.
Good effort, sir.
Wacky wagers?
Yes, absolutely.
How'd you do?
Will Hall he put up a pretty good fight. I think he had Hideki on his squad. Hideki choked and blew the cut by 1 shot, which was just enough to give me a narrow margin of win. So I won by about 15 or 17 points, somewhere right around that range. It was a good battle all the way through Sunday till the end.
What are you adding to the collection?
For my efforts, I won a map of Pebble Beach golf course. So something I kind of put on the wall maybe over here. It'll go well with the rest of the ambiance.
Cool.
So it was a great battle. It was a fun one to watch and check up on over the weekend. So a lot of fun, and we'll be looking to do one here this week. I think I actually told one individual that he was going to be on for the week. He's going to put up a couple of Chicago-style deep dish pizzas to send out.
I'm game.
Not sure how that works in terms of sending those through, but hopefully I'll win them. We'll get to try them out.
Sounds good to me. This week we have an event that's going to kind of make me sad that we're not out there this year. The Deutsche Bank Championship. We were out there last year for the DraftKings Fantasy Golf World Championships.
Was the best of times and the worst.
It was the Paul Casey.
Yeah, it was the Paul Casey event. That's what we should have done our shot for.
We should have.
That asshole.
Well, if he does it again, maybe
you
we'll
owe
use it
us $80,000. $80,000, maybe $180,000.
Maybe.
So,
yep.
Oh well.
It'll be sad not being out there this year, but it's a great event. Down to 100 players in the FedEx Cup. It's at TPC Boston. Par 71, measures about 7,200 yards. It's not a super long course. Super cool course if you get a chance to go out there. We walked all 18 at least once a day when we were out there. It was beautiful.
Yeah,
not that many people at the event, which was outstanding. You could follow whatever group you wanted regardless.
Yeah, Brooks Koepka almost hit me with one of his shots.
Yep.
That's how well he was playing.
Yep. You saw Charlie Hoffman acknowledge your shirt.
Yeah, he gave his usual Charlie look through his sunglasses.
We met Justin Thomas, and it was a pretty cool event.
He's even smaller in person.
He's a
than you would
tiny
imagine.
little man, especially standing next to
us.
us.
You see the statistics of how small he is? You're like, oh, he's even smaller than I thought.
Yep. The event starts Friday, which is a little bit different. So take note of that. It doesn't start on Thursday like it usually does. So rather than have a void on Thursday, jump in a Euro contest, join our Euro Tour package, because otherwise Thursday will just be no good without any golf action and shot trackers. So.
We'll both be getting work done.
Yeah, I suppose. Like I said, 100-player field, but still the top 70 in ties makes the cut. So you can be a little bit more aggressive, or you might have to be a little bit more aggressive because you're going to need guys with finishing position more than just making the cut this week, because a higher percentage is going to make the cut.
Although, what we should acknowledge, what's interesting though, is we had this philosophy last year when we went out to the event live, and we figured everybody is going to get 6 of 6 through, because there's just not that many guys that miss the cut.
Yep.
And ironically enough,
but guys missed the cut.
Out of the 25 teams that were in the live final, 0 teams had 6 of 6 through the cut, which was just astounding. So it's a decent week actually if you can avoid a little bit of the chalkiness here, because there are going to be a lot of people gathered in. They're going to clump around certain players this week more so than normal in terms of riding some of these guys through the cut. And if just a handful of these bigger names miss the cut like they did last year.
Jordan.
Yeah, exactly. Jordan Spieth missed the cut. Jason Bone was on fire coming into the event. He blew the cut after. He was a course horse as well. Tony Finau. Brooks Koepka.
Oh, that was painful.
Exactly. And obviously Paul Casey. Withdraw. So it ended up being actually quite a bit more exciting than anticipated as far as just getting guys through. So something to consider.
Key stats this week: strokes gained tee to green, special emphasis on strokes gained tee to green approach shots. That'll be extra. Birdies or better percentage, strokes gained putting, and par 5 scoring. All of these will be built in as kind of baseline measures into our model. Go ahead and use that, or if you want to, download it and adjust the weightings however you want. It's completely interactive, so if you want to switch that around, that's the cool part about our model, is you can do whatever you want with it. Stress certain areas. We also have a European Tour event this week, the Omega European Masters, another Masters event over there.
Pretty decent field.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll talk a little bit about that field. Let's do PGA first. Who you liking at the top, Zachary?
I was big on him last week. I'm probably going to be big on him this week. Jason Day.
Pretty tough not to be.
If you're gonna use him on your GPP rosters, just go ahead and overload. That's what you have to do to gain an advantage on the field. If you're only gonna buy him at 20% or 25% and be field average, you're not really gonna get that boost when he goes off and does well. So if you're gonna own him this week, just push your chips in on him. Get quite a few shares of him. Obviously, he's had a pretty nice history, and you just know he's one of those guys that you can count on most weeks to be in.
That was a kiss of death right there.
Most weeks to be in contention. It's like I wrote that in my column last night. I don't know that he'll win at the Barclays when I wrote that in my column last night. I just know that he'll be on TV on Sunday. That's really all I'm aiming for. Is are the networks still interested enough in where he is at within the pack to show a handful of his shots? And
he played about as bad as he could have played last week, in my opinion. He couldn't hit a fairway, missing a bunch of greens, wasn't sinking his putts, and he still finished top 5.
His leg putting was awful. I mean, he was leaving putts 8 feet short, 7 feet short, and then he drills one. He drills this curveball from like 50 feet on 60, and then the 15, and then the very next hole he leg putts and he leaves it 9 feet short, and then ends up bogeying. So it was really frustrating to watch, because you can see all the talent there every time the guy's out on the course, and anytime he doesn't make the perfect shot, you just think, what the hell just happened?
Yeah.
So I think Day is going to be an obvious choice. A lot of people are going to own him, but I think that's okay. I think I'm still ready to roll with him. But who do you like at the top? Is there any other name that really stands out? A lot of the other guys are kind of checkered in terms of their course history.
Well, absolutely they are. Well, Adam Scott's got a good tournament history here. He looked great last week. You and I were both, on him.
All over him last week.
But I think he's going to get a bump in ownership this week because
Sure.
he should have been runner-up. If he makes that simple putt on 18, he has a runner-up finish. But so I think he's going to be more popular. Anyone going to own Stenson this week?
Oh,
It's going to be mass exodus, isn't it?
Well, I think people are worried. It's one thing if a guy just misses a cut because you think, well, he was just off his game a little bit. But if it's actually an injury that's at all serious,
But you never know with
I know
Henrik.
you don't know. He could have just been pissed off, but he wasn't out of it by any stretch. There's only 3 shots over after his round, so he was definitely still in the event. But yeah, you don't know. I mean, that's the second withdrawal within like the last 11 weeks.
He's
or
such
so.
a head case, though. He just checks out. If he's down.
The tricky part of it, though, is he's very good on this course.
Yes, he is.
He's got a win. He's got a second place, but he should have won last year if he doesn't put it in the drink on 16 right in front of the DraftKings.
You hear the roar.
I think that might be the reason why DraftKings wasn't able to do a live event there this year. Because when Henrik put the ball in the water and the whole chalet just erupted as him and Ricky were walking up, it was pretty comical to see. So that was entertaining. But he's been so good here, and after a withdrawal last week, obviously I am not going to put him on my cash game team because I don't know where he's at. But I may take a little buy. I may take 10% in GPP action just in case he surprises again, and because I do think his ownership comes down to probably 8 to 10%.
I think so. It'd be below 10,
somewhere in that range.
Yep. I think there's some decent players in the upper 8s and lower 9s that I think I might be dropping down to if I do Jason Day. The pricing isn't as soft as it was last week for the Barclays, at least in my opinion. The upper is about the same, but the lower seems like they've tightened it up a little bit from last week. So you can't really stack Day and Johnson this week like you easily could last week.
Yeah, you could last week. This week it's tough.
So I'll be dropping down probably in the 8s. I think there's a lot of good players down there that I think will produce value. I mean, Bubba at 8,900. You never know with the guy, but he barely made the cut last week, but racks up DraftKings points.
He always
has
does.
One humongous round.
Yeah, round 3 or 4, or maybe he's just teeing off early in the morning. He gets out there in good conditions and has a nice little run, and now he's tied for 13th place at the end of the day. You just don't see it coming. I think guy who looked great last weekend, who's looked great all season, Emiliano Grillo.
For sure.
9,000. I think that's a good price. His game seems to fit pretty well everywhere. He hasn't really struggled too much. He hasn't missed very many cuts all year. So I think he's a guy, even without any course history, that I like quite a bit. Jim Furyk has a nice history here overall. I'm okay on using him. What do you think about him?
I'm mixed on Furyk. I mean, I don't think his price is as great as I'd like to see it, 8,800, but I also think that's going to keep some people away from him. I just don't know where he's at. It's hard to tell. I might end up having some shares.
I think I'll own a few shares. I mean, I'm just seeing some of the brilliance of his game over the last month or so. He seems to be pretty well locked in. So I think at 8,800, that's definitely a nice buy.
The guy who caught my attention at 8,600 because he had his price absolutely slashed from last week is Hideki Matsuyama.
Sure.
He missed the cut at the Barclays, didn't look good. But he had 2 top 5s coming in. He's very up and down, but for GPP, I think that's what you're looking for. His ownership will be cut big time this week.
Yeah.
So I think that's a decent buy down in there just to take shots on GPP if you got multiple $3 entries or something like that.
I think one of the highest owned guys in that middle 8,000 range, we were discussing him earlier, Matt Kuchar.
Yeah.
He's had a pretty nice history here. A bunch of top 25s, couple of top 10s. Looked good here last year. I think he was on one, if not both.
He was on the one. Yeah,
that's right. You were too terrified.
Top 10.
I remember you were too terrified to put any player on both teams.
And it's a good thing because that player probably would have been Brooks.
Yeah, or Finau. Yeah, one or the other. It could have very well been. But at 8,400, why is he priced at 8,400 this week?
Too cheap.
He gets about an $800 price cut this week in a smaller field at an event that he's pretty good at.
Right.
I think he'll be on almost every cash game team this
Probably.
week. I haven't seen our model yet I am assuming he will be a starter.
I'm guessing. He usually ranks really high.
So, I think Matt Kuchar. GPP, I may shy away a little bit. I may own some shares just in case we get the top 5. I mean, I may own like 5 to 10%, so I will underweight Kuchar.
Yeah.
It won't be an all-out fade, but I would have a hard time going in on him real heavily just because I don't think he's necessarily anything close to a lock for a top 5 type of finish.
Right.
And I just don't think I'm going to get the upside. If I own him at 25% and he takes 27th place, am I really all that excited about it? Probably
because the field will own him at 25%.
Exactly. So you're not really getting a ton of upside there.
Right.
But if he should miss the cut or place like 60th or something, then dodging him completely, you've kind of avoided a pretty big landmine there. So I think that'll be the play with Kuchar.
Yep. Down in the 7K range, a couple of guys who stood out to me. Justin Thomas at 7,600. I think he's a guy who makes just about every cut. He's only missed a handful this year. A lot of upside. He's taking a couple top 5s not too long ago. So I like him at 7,600. I also think Snedeker at 7,700 is
sneaky.
A little bit sneaky down there too.
Sure, he hasn't exactly had an amazing history here at the course, but his game has been pretty good.
It has been, yeah.
So
what do you like down in that range?
I think Charlie Hoffman is a guy that I'll be looking at this week. We watched him last year play this course really well, and like I said, maybe it was because we followed him for an entire round and in our Fantasy Golf Insider shirts, which he gave us a weird look at when he saw. But he played really well. We knew he was not going to win the event. I mean, you could see Stenson and Fowler just chasing him down over the last couple of days. But he's had pretty good success here. And Charlie's one of those players where there's just certain courses that are Charlie courses where he's done well historically. And very quietly, he's been in the top 25 for the last couple of weeks. His price only $7,300 this week.
Yeah.
He's not exactly the most accurate of hitters overall, but it's not necessarily an accuracy style course.
Not so much, no.
No, his tee to green game, relatively strong. Approach game here, relatively strong. So I think that Charlie will be one of those players I look at, and another guy down in that range would be Gary Woodland. Obviously coming off of a real nice finish this past weekend at the Barclays. If he could have just hit a putt too, he could have been right in there. He missed so many short putts inside of 10 feet there at the end that he really could have contended. Also another guy who doesn't necessarily post a ton of top 10s, but I do think that Woodland with his price this week in the mid 7,000 range will be good for a top 25.
Okay, all right. Dropping down a little bit more in the 6K range, there's some decent options. A couple guys who were in the 5K range last week, Brendan Steele and Ryan Palmer, got a price jump because they played pretty well. And
yeah, I just didn't get that with Palmer last week at 5,900.
Right.
It just didn't make a lot of sense for a guy who's made as many cuts as he does and as many top 25s as he has. It's not like he came in especially cold, so that was a pretty easy overload.
We both had him heavily overweight.
Huge.
That helped. But he's only at 6,700. I think that's not bad. I also like, I think Tony Finau at 6,500 is a little cheap. He had a price slash this week.
Are you scared after what we saw last year?
Yeah, I mean, Tony Finau always scares me a bit. He's a GPP play. I won't touch him in cash just because he is so inconsistent, but he's got such high upside. If he starts birding and eagling holes, he racks up the points. So I think it's a decent GPP play. Another guy down there, I know you like, Webb Simpson at 6,100.
That's what I was going to talk about.
Were you? Well, go ahead. I'll just tee it up for you.
No, he's a former champion here. He's made the cut the last few times out, and he's been making cuts. He hasn't really had a lot of great Webb Simpson kind of finishes in the top 15, top 10 kind of range, but he also hasn't been missing a lot of cuts either. At 6,100, you're starting to get into the range of just don't disappoint me this week. So as long as Webb Simpson doesn't completely just fall apart and blow the cut, you're probably not going to be too pissed off with wherever he ends up finishing for the week. He's going to put up enough points to make 6,100 a pretty reasonable price.
Sure.
Another guy taking a little bit more risk, dropping down to 6,000. The guy who's disappointed people the last couple weeks, although not us. We weren't on him last week. But Daniel Summerhays at 6,000. We actually watched him play. He had a nice little resurgence in the FedEx Cup playoffs that carried over into the fall season last year. So he did have a top 10 finish here. He's made the cut here all 4 times that he's been here. And I think the fact that people are going to be off him since he's missed the last couple cuts and really disappointed folks a couple times out makes him a particularly attractive GPP play. So I'm not going to be overloading. That won't be one that I'm up at the 20-25% range, but I will probably take a little bite and have around 5 to 10% for summer haze.
Sounds pretty good. Anyone else down in that range that's interesting you at all?
Not really off the bat. I'll probably save the rest for the column.
Okay, sounds good. You want to talk a little Euro before we wrap it up? It's
Might
actually a
as
pretty
well.
good field. Danny Willett's leading the charge with salaries 12-4.
Are you going to own him? I'm not going to own him at all.
You have 0 of Danny Willett.
well,
His
I-
form has been just atrocious.
I tend to play mostly cash games for Euro just because it's so tricky to try to find a good combination of guys. But
Right.
I may open it up a little bit more. This field is strong enough. The last few weeks, the field's been so much weaker than normal.
Yep.
It's been really tough to dig out a good core of 15, 20 GPP players
Right.
and have any really good shots. So I've been playing a lot more cash games, but Willett at the top there, that's too expensive for a guy whose game has just not been very impressive at all. He had one top 10 after winning the Masters, but other than that, he just seems like he's checked out the rest of the season. He's like,
sure.
I got my green jacket. I'm going to take it around the countryside here a little bit, let everybody see it.
Yep.
But I'm not really going to play a lot of golf.
No.
So he hasn't played a lot. He hasn't done that well. When he's played, it's been really disappointing. So, and at his price, I don't feel the need to lock him down up there. I'd much rather go with a guy like Tyrrell Hatton, who's been great in Europe all year long. Obviously, he just burned people here the last time out with an atrocious finish on his last 9 holes.
Yep.
But he's been great for us. He's done really well in most of the European events. He did pretty well in terms of making the cut and having some reasonable upside here in the U.S. So Hatton will be a guy that I will probably look at the top. How about you at the top?
Well, there's a couple guys who, when you look at their tournament history, or not tournament history, current form, Alex Noren and Bernd Wiesberger, you can clearly distinguish what are the European events and then what are the majors. And their success has obviously been in the European events, not so much the majors. So we go back to just a Euro event. The field isn't as tough. The course isn't as tough. So I think they're both reasonable buys, and you can get them both in a roster reasonably. So I like those two guys in the upper range, I would say.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of upside for both of them.
Yeah, and looking down a little bit, Bradley Dredge, he's not been very good here, but he hasn't really been good in Europe until this year. This year has been kind of a breakout season. His form's been really good overall.
He helped us quite a bit last week.
Yes, he did. At the top 5 finish, so that was good. So that Bradley Dredge would be a guy that I take a look at. I think Richie Ramsey has done really well here. He won this event. He's got a couple other top 10s, so that'll be an obvious one that attracts most people.
Yep.
It's tricky with Europe just because you don't see these guys play so much, so you don't any they're so limited in terms of their statistics. You don't really get a great feel on what it is that they're doing out there or what's kind of propelling them onwards. So you do end up kind of trusting history here a little bit more in terms of helping you out.
Tournament history was huge last week.
For sure.
Which was crazy.
Yep.
Dropping down a little bit, a couple other names that I'll throw out there. Mark Warren at 6,700, I think, is a decent buy. Zanotti at 6,600, I kind of like this week. A guy who is absolutely red hot, Carlberg, earlier in the season has just lost his way recently. But I think for a GPP pick, his ownership will be very, very low. But obviously has shown that he does have tremendous upside. So I think he's worth a stab down at 6,500.
A guy who I would probably only play in GPP action, I wouldn't probably not take him into cash games. Marcus Frazier, he looked really good at the Olympics.
Yeah.
And he's been very hit or miss here, but when he's hit, he's been great. He's missed not so much, but that's definitely a guy worth taking a couple of shots on there this week. And one other guy, interesting, it's 7,500 this week. We've seen him. He was the young sensation on the U.S. tour for about 2 or 3 weeks or so before just falling apart. But Bryson DeChambeau is playing over there this week at 7,500. Any interest in Bryson?
Yeah, I'll probably take a shot on him.
Yeah.
Although I don't think his ownership, I think because of the name value, it'll probably be, pretty high.
You think it'll still be high?
I think so.
I think people are getting kind of off the...
I think over 10%. Don't you think?
With Europe, it's really tough
It
to
is
say
tough to
for
tell.
ownership. We haven't really been able to gauge exactly what ownership is. It's based almost strictly on course history. So for a guy like DeChambeau who hasn't played there before and isn't necessarily walking in with the most amazing form, I think it's going to be tough. I don't think in most of the models this week he's going to he's going to look all that good compared to some of the other
You
guys.
just look at some other names around him, and it's like they don't belong.
Yeah,
but
there's not much.
No.
Yeah, once you get down into that range, it gets pretty tough. So,
at any rate, read Perry's preview column for both the PGA and Euro, but he does a real nice job on the Euro. Also, I do my GPP picks in the Hardcore Core as well, so check that out. Also, the PGA DFS has a model and puts out his targets every week too. He had a couple big names as well last week. So if you have any questions or want to give us any information, let us know how you're doing. Email us at info@fantasygolfinsider.com. You can find us on Twitter @fantasygolfers. We do Periscope. Jason does his on Tuesday night at 9 p.m. Central Time. Zachary does his Periscope on Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Central Time. So if you have any last-minute lineup questions, tune in, ask those guys. Anything else to add, Zachary, for the Deutsche Bank?
no, I think that's good. It should be an exciting week. 2 good tournaments. And you get golf all weekend and into Monday
And
for
Monday,
the holidays. So.
which will suck for us next week. But
Oh, I forgot about
because salaries
that.
won't come out on Monday, they'll come out on Tuesday. Because DraftKings can't possibly get them out on the same day that the event ends.
No, I'm sad.
Yeah, it sucks. It's horrible. And last week we had the week off after the Deutsche Bank, so we didn't have to do a webcast, but we do next week and rebounds.
That's right. So we have it, and so they do play
BMW,
next
yeah.
week, but then there is
a week, off,
which is
before the Tour Championship.
Which is
Yeah.
weird because last year
It was different.
They had it on the first week of the NFL season, which I don't know why they wouldn't do that again this year. But maybe the Ryder Cup maybe threw it off,
Or the Olympics.
or the Olympics, or just the whole thing. All right.
Best of luck this week, and we'll talk to you soon. Good luck.